Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another installment of ISV Connect Live. My name is Brian Galicia. I lead our global business applications ISV team here at Microsoft. It's an honor and pleasure to welcome Preseetha from Seismic. And before we jump directly to her and start the conversation, like I always do, let me give you a quick couple ground rules as we get this conversation started. One, if you're watching this live, thank you so much for spending time with us. Whatever time zone you might be in, it might be later in your day, it might be first thing in the morning. Truly appreciate you investing the time to learn more about our BizApps ecosystem and the great business applications like Seismic that we bring on. So during the event, we'd love to hear where you're watching from. So within the LinkedIn feed, if you just want to type in where you're watching from, maybe you're watching it from England, where Preseetha is watching from, or myself from Seattle, Washington. We'd love to just hear where people are watching from, and I'll give a quick shout out as we go through the event and flash your name up, thanking you for the time. Also, if there's some portion of the conversation or the questioning that we're asking, and it prompts you to want to ask a question, feel free to also put that in the LinkedIn window, and I'm happy to type that or verbally ask Preseetha in real time, so that you can get some insight into potential feedback that Preseetha may have on your question. And then last is throughout the event, just so we know that maybe if the content's resonating, feel free to use one of the icons in the LinkedIn feed, support, like, etc. That also gives us an indication that the content and the information we're sharing is actually valuable to you. So with that being said, Preseetha, thank you so much for taking the time with us at Microsoft to share a little bit about Seismic and yourself. So let's kick this off and give everyone a little background on what you do at Seismic. And then the one question I always ask our guests are, what's one thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile you're open to sharing to people watching this video?
Thanks, Brian. And it's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, I'm Preseetha. I'm the VP of Strategic Alliances at Seismic. Been with Seismic about 2.5 years, and myself and my team look after all of our partnership programs here, of which Microsoft is one of our biggest partners and one of the partners we're most excited to be working with. In terms of me, well, I guess I'm sure many people have said this to you, Brian, through the last few months, but I'm a big travel lover and I love to sample great food from around the world, but sadly have been spending far too much time in this little home office of mine. But very, very excited that things seem to be opening up a lot more, and I am really looking forward to making that next big trip sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks, Preseetha. So maybe my follow-up question is, what is your most favorite place you've ever been?
I think my favorite place would be the Maldives. I am a lover of beautiful blue seas and perfect beaches, and the Maldives is a great place to really just get that perfect experience and to really allow you to completely switch off and disconnect from work, which I'm sure a lot of us are craving right now. So yeah, I'm hoping we can get ourselves back there very, very soon.
I love that. You're the third person that I've known that has gone there. My daughter, my oldest daughter, she dreams about like sitting on those blue oceans, like you mentioned, Indian Ocean.
Oh, take her, Brian. You got to take her soon.
Will do. So let's do a quick shout out before we get into the meat of the conversation. So John, thank you so much, watching from Cincinnati, Ohio. And then Paul, watching from England as well. Yeah, Leicestershire, or I'm never not pronouncing that correctly. But
he's in Leicester in the UK, so yeah, great to have someone from the UK on the chat.
Yeah, fantastic, and I think they also have a pretty good football team as well.
They do.
Yeah, because I was like, I think that name looks familiar. So why don't we start out, Preseetha? So give everyone a sense for, I mean, Seismic is an amazing scenario when we think about impact to sellers and marketing to drive better selling outcomes. So it'd be great if you can kind of share the point of view as to what are the business outcomes that Seismic really drives, and how do you do it with Microsoft?
Yes, of course. So in terms of what does Seismic do, our Smarter Enablement solution really helps sales team to be much more productive, faster. And we do that in 3 key ways. So the first thing we do is we enable. So we provide sellers with the right skills to be effective, and alongside that, we surface to them the right content with the right context to help them to win more deals and to increase customer loyalty. Secondly, then we engage. So we engage with buyers at the right time and the right place. We meet our buyers in the channel that's most relevant to them with the right content to support them. And then finally, we improve. So we help companies to understand what's working and how they can keep getting better. So that's really the fundamentals of what Seismic does. But when we bring Seismic together with Microsoft, well, Seismic's platformed on Azure, and our solution is deeply embedded into Dynamics, into Outlook and Office. So all the places that you'd expect a seller to be living day in, day out. Seismic can utilize all the data from Dynamics to recommend the most relevant piece of content for a seller to use to continue a sales conversation. So if you're within an opportunity, for example, we can understand the sales stage of that opportunity, the opportunity type, maybe the products that are involved, so that we can then recommend content that's most relevant and that's maybe been used in other similar situations very successfully. What that means is a seller no longer has to guess what's the most useful piece of content. They've got insights backing them up. Now, once they've found that content, they can use our live send capability either within Dynamics, within Outlook, or just from their browser to send that content directly to their buyer and track whether or not that buyer is engaging with the content. They can find out which pages of the content they're engaging with so that when they follow up, they can continue to make sure that conversation is most meaningful. We also know that these days, B2B buyers really expect the kind of same experience they get in a B2C selling situation. They want a highly personalized solution that meets their needs. But we also know that for sellers, all that personalization, all that tailoring can be hugely time consuming. So Seismic, again, helps with our live doc capability. A seller can use that to create a highly differentiated presentation for a client in minutes. They can ensure that presentation is going to be on brand, it's going to be specifically relevant to the client, and they're not spending hours trying to put that together. That can be done really in minutes. So, Brian, those are just a few ways that Seismic helps sellers to be more effective and do that with strong collaboration with Microsoft.
What a well said point of view, Preseetha, because you think about selling organizations. I mean, the biggest thing is adding value at the right time. And you mentioned so many things in there to unpack that really provides that capability for a seller to drive better selling outcomes, because you think about account-based marketing. For those of you who have heard that term or that reference before, a lot of it just comes down to being relevant at the right time. And then to your point, that feedback loop is so important, not just the seller, but the sales leadership to determine, are there signals, and what I like to call buying signals, that are occurring to know that when you're doing that outreach or you're leveraging that information to educate a buyer on what journey they should take, you understand whether or not that's actually occurring or not. And I think even more so, you said it so well with the points of view where a seller exists or a seller is in, I'm using the term from last week when we talked about our new Windows offerings from Surface, how our leadership talks about the flow. And I resonate with that because sellers, and you and I with that background as well, you're in Dynamics or you're in your CRM instance, you're in Outlook, or you're in whatever it may be. If you have access to the information in the relevancy of when you're looking at it, being able to take action, that is such a powerful capability.
Exactly. Just keeping that flow going. I mean, we know in today's environment, I mean, selling is hard these days. You know, there's so many different buyers involved in a sales conversation. A seller's going through far more interactions with their buyer for them to make a decision than they ever did before. And, you know, buyers these days actually quite like this remote selling environment. So how do we just make it as easy as possible for a seller to know what are the most relevant things? And now that I've figured out what that most relevant thing is, how can I follow up exactly where I am without having to click into lots of different systems, you know, stop my workflow, but just keeping that conversation, that chain of thought going and allowing him to follow up in a most relevant way.
That's right, Preseetha. I guess one last follow-up question is, what typically have you seen buyers or customers before they use Seismic and the after transformation effect? What's been kind of the environments that they are operating in? I'll give the experience, and we're going to go a little bit more when we talk about Microsoft's use of it. But going into various sites like SharePoint or OneDrive to go, okay, if I'm a seller, go into this area and try to go through all these folders and say, okay, go pick it out. Is that kind of what do you typically have found and seen organizations using prior to them transforming a better outcome, selling outcomes with Seismic?
Well, it's exactly what you say. Sellers are going into tons of different systems to try and figure out where is it I can find that content. They may be going, I know I've seen something somewhere. Was that on SharePoint, or was that in some folder on some team site? Where is that content? If we want to talk about customer experiences, Brian, as you know, Microsoft are a user of Seismic internally, and prior to Seismic, they had nearly 150 different systems that sellers could go to in order to find that right content. And you just think what impact that has to productivity. I mean, suddenly you bring all that content together into a single system that's then connected directly to your CRM environment. And suddenly think about all those minutes and hours that you gain back that you can use to be having better conversations with your buyers instead of rooting through lots of different folders trying to find that perfect piece of content. That's the game changer.
Yeah, spot on. And I guess last two is we're focusing on sellers. Maybe articulate a little bit about the marketing side too, because you can imagine the people actually creating the content are the marketing team. So talk about a little bit about how does it impact marketing resources to allow the pipeline or all this great content that marketing people create to then have it put in the hands of the sellers when they need it at the right time, to your point.
Great point there, Brian. And the challenge marketing has is, marketing are producing huge amounts of content to support their go-to-market teams on a day-to-day basis. But before Seismic, those marketing teams have no idea what content sellers are actually using and then what content's really resonating with buyers. So you bring Seismic into play and suddenly marketing has this huge amount of insight. They can understand what content their top sellers use, which is helping them to know that those are the pieces of content that are resonating best and helping to move sales conversations forward. But they also know what content is really appealing to the buyers they're trying to speak to. Is that piece of content working? What pages on that content did the buyer engage with? Maybe that helps them to understand what gaps they have. One of the other great things that Seismic does is with all our insights, we also can help marketers to understand, a seller's put a search word into Seismic to try and find a piece of content and nothing's come up. Now, what that tells marketing is there's a gap there. Sellers are asking for this phrase and I now need to build that content. So we even offer marketing the ability to look for the most commonly used search terms that return no results or returning low results so they can start anticipating future seller needs and start responding to them.
Thank you for sharing that, Preseetha. That is so great because it's that full circle to your point, not just sellers and sales leaders understanding what's making an impact to a selling cycle, but then what are the gaps that marketing potentially needs to fill to address content that helps to provide that point of view in whatever that selling scenario may be. So let's go to the next question, because Seismic has been an amazing partner of Microsoft for the past many years. What has that experience been like for Seismic, just being part of the Microsoft ecosystem? And you said it so well, where you're touching the Microsoft Cloud, you're touching Azure, you're touching BizApps, Teams, etc. So give us a sense for people listening and the partners listening, like what's been Seismic's personal experience being part of the Microsoft ecosystem?
Of course, yeah. I mean, as you said, we've been a partner for many years. So our relationship really has evolved over that years. But what we really love and what we're most excited by is how Microsoft keeps evolving and refining your partner programs to ensure that we as partners can get benefits. We really value the focus Microsoft placed on aligning with their partners and really enabling us to engage with more and more Microsoft sellers on joint initiatives. You've got a great range of tools that we're able to use to help us to know what is the right way to connect with your sellers to get the best results we're looking for. And you also continue to evolve and grow out the number of opportunities partners have to raise their profile across your sales base. So helping us get to more co-sell days or maybe spotlight sessions so we can educate your teams around the globe on how Seismic can help them to work, if we collaborate together to achieve their goals. we've really seen a huge increase in revenue through this partnership. So year on year, we're continuing to see that partnership grow. We're seeing more co-sell wins together. And, we were really, really humbled to be one of your top ISV partners last year. And we really hope we can deliver some great results again together this year.
Yeah, and I as well, Preseetha. I mean, being for everyone listening, Seismic is a global ISV, and that distinction means a lot because of the impact that you're making, not just in one market, but in the many markets that we serve. And it's so great to hear that Seismic is getting the opportunity through co-selling, because that is one of the big things that essentially is a win-win for not just the ISV, but for Microsoft. But then it's also a win for our end customer, because the end customer is benefiting by an amazing set of solutions, particularly the sales enablement solutions coming from Seismic, to drive, again, amazing outcomes.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this year, we're also really excited that we launched in the Azure Marketplace this year. And that's something where Microsoft has given ISV providers like Seismic the opportunity to promote their solution that way and to allow your customers to use that as an easy vehicle to buy technology and to get access to that quickly. So, great initiative that you've set in motion there, and we're really excited at the growth we're seeing in that opportunity.
No, thanks for that comment, Preseetha, because you're spot on. I mean, just taking that co-sell is great when you can get that one-on-one connection with our Microsoft sellers, but a lot of the co-sell also exists, to your point, of just appearing in the marketplace where, like you mentioned, a buyer typing in sales enablement, whether it be in the Azure Marketplace or in our solution marketplace for biz apps and teams, Seismic then surfacing at the top and then creating that opportunity connection just through our marketplace is such a great point that you made. So why don't we talk about, you mentioned, and you did a great job articulating, what is that value proposition that organizations can have, not just from selling, but from marketing. So one of my favorite areas that I discuss with ISVs on these weekly calls is, what are the customer stories? Because that's the best thing about it, is that when you talk about the amazing things that can happen, then when a customer actually uses it, implements it, and then sees that transformation, including Microsoft, give a sense, Preseetha, from your lens, like what are some of those customers that you've been exposed to that have gotten this realization of these amazing selling outcomes through the use of Seismic and Microsoft Dynamics, Azure, et cetera?
Sure. Let me talk about a couple. And one that springs to mind is Rockwell Automation, who wanted to find a more efficient way to deliver content to their 1,500 sellers and distributors. They were wasting huge amounts of time searching for content in different systems. So all the challenges we talked about earlier. But they are now using Seismic embedded into D365. So their sellers benefit from Seismic's AI-powered predictive recommendations, which then surfaces that next best recommended piece of content and really helps them to drive a more impactful sales engagement. They've seen huge increases in the search quality that their sellers are experiencing, along with a massive increase in seller satisfaction and efficiency. They know that their sellers are always using the latest messaging and the right content, and as a result, they know that they can be engaging in much more meaningful customer engagements. So it's been a huge win for us to partner together on that account.
That's fantastic. When you think about this global size and scope, I mean, when you said 15,000 sellers, that's very close to even our size, because when you think about, you referenced our use of Seismic, and I can say firsthand, same thing. I mean, with 17,000 plus Microsoft sellers globally, how do you manage that access to information? And exactly to your point, what Seismic has done is helped us consolidate the sources of truth so that all these places, you can imagine how it exacerbated the size of Microsoft, all these places a seller has to look for. The great thing is that with most organizations, including Microsoft, we go after sales plays and we go after scenarios. And so when organizations go and say, okay, I'm going to go into financial services accounts with this type of thing, okay, what information should I be using? And with partnership with Seismic and using Dynamics and Dynamics implemented internally, we as Microsoft are enabled to go after many of those things that Preseetha talked about, being able to understand what relevant information can I use in that selling scenario the sales process, the type of account we're going after, and having that relevant information to be sent, but then also seeing what happens when we actually send it. Did the person look at it? Did the organization actually engage with it? So that's fantastic.
And I think what was really interesting with the Microsoft and your internal story was, it really was all evolving and unfolding during these last 18 months. So suddenly you had the situation like so many companies where you've got this new remote workforce and you're trying to think about how do I best enable them and how do I make sure that they've got the right content in their hands. And that wasn't 150 different content systems for you to be looking through. That was one in combined environment through Dynamics where you could find the right content and continue those conversations and make sure that your sellers could keep being productive. So, it's a fantastic story, and it's so great when, whenever we're on a co-sell meeting with Microsoft and the seller says to me, oh yeah, I use Seismic, this is how I use it internally. I mean, it's just such a great experience for us, and we're so pleased that your sellers have really found that a beneficial tool to utilize through these difficult times we've been through.
Yeah, that's right, Preseetha. And I think that's the biggest thing for people listening and watching this, either live or during the recording, is that Seismic really helps to transform your selling B2B scenarios, regardless of the industry. Of course, we as Microsoft and high-tech software and Rockwell manufacturing types of scenarios is like if you have a selling organization supported by marketing in a B2B scenario, there's an opportunity potentially for you to explore. If you're finding that you're realizing, gosh, the ability for my sellers to be most effective in driving the best selling probability outcome, it's one of those things that hopefully, as you've heard Preseetha talk about, an amazing opportunity to evaluate and look at their solution, especially when it's paired to your existing Microsoft account and Dynamics.
Okay.
A great way to pair that up. So as we wrap up, and again, for people watching, if you have a question, we have a few minutes for me to kind of flash up a potential question to ask Preseetha. But as we wrap up, Preseetha, let's talk about like how do people learn more? What are some of the recommendations you have for people who, like, if it strikes a chord, someone listens to this going, oh my gosh, this is something super interesting to me. How would they get started?
Sure. Well, I guess there could be a few different people who could be listening to the call today. So, maybe if you're a Microsoft seller, feel free to reach out to me or to Edwin Vargas, who's our partner manager on the Microsoft side. So either one of us can help get you connected and learning more about how Seismic and Microsoft work together. If you're interested in the Seismic solution, again, you can reach out to me or you can go to seismic.com, and there's a huge wealth of information there on how we help enable smarter outcomes for better buying decisions. And if you're interested in being a partner, I mean, Seismic definitely looks at, bringing on board more Microsoft partners. So if you're a Microsoft partner and you think that Seismic sounds interesting to you, then again, we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to connect with me directly, or you can check out our partner page on our website where you can learn more about the other types of organizations already working with us. So hopefully that's a few different ways to connect.
Yeah, that's great, Preseetha. And it's just seismic.com. Or another thing that we put together is if you bookmark this link or type it down and go into a web browser later and type in aka.ms/seismicli just for LinkedIn, because it's a container that we put together for this LinkedIn Live experience. Feel free to also leverage that as a call to action to consume information. The one thing before we close out as well is that we actually, Preseetha and the Seismic team were kind enough to send me a video. So as Preseetha and I wrap up and as we close this out, please stay just one more minute and you'll be able to watch a video that articulates the value proposition of the scenario. So I'm just looking at my phone and looking at the comments. Doesn't look like there's anyone that has a question. So as we wrap up, Preseetha, thank you so much for spending the time. And are there any last comments you'd like to make before we wrap up the call and we turn it over to the video that you had shared?
Just really to say, Brian, thank you so much for inviting us onto the call today. And thank you so much for the partnership. We really value working with Microsoft and are looking forward to a great year together.
No, I appreciate it so much, Preseetha. So again, team, for people watching, we do these LinkedIn Live event shows every Monday at 8 o'clock West Coast time. Next week, we have a solution for incentive compensation commission management from a company called Exactly. So another installment of this that I can't miss. So stay tuned for more details. Again, 8 o'clock West Coast time. But thank you again, Preseetha. It is a pleasure to have you on the phone. And definitely, if I do make a trip out with my family out to the Maldives, I will definitely give you a heads up.
I can provide some recommendations there, no problem at all. Thank you very much, Brian.
Okay, sounds good, everyone. Be well, be safe, and enjoy this video from Seismic. Thank you.
With every customer interaction, your sellers are creating and sharing a variety of content. Making sure they always have the right materials and information is critical. Your sellers need a guiding force to help them deliver the most compelling messages to their buyers. The Seismic Sales Enablement platform integrates seamlessly with Microsoft's most critical applications like Dynamics, Outlook, Teams, and Office 365. Seismic is proven to make sellers more productive, shorten sales cycles, and increase adoption at scale. Our Teams app eliminates the need to switch between platforms in order to share content, streamlining communication within your organization. Fully integrated with Office 365, Seismic makes it easy for users to create and collaborate using the tools they already know and love. Inside Outlook, your reps can quickly find and send the best collateral without ever leaving their inbox. Seismic recognizes a prospect's email and uses the information from Dynamics like industry and sales stage to recommend the top content that will be most effective at that moment. All of Seismic's tools are available within the familiar setting of Microsoft Dynamics. As the sales situation changes, Seismic adjusts to recommend content that's always relevant, contextual, and targeted. Our intelligent search provides on-demand access to your company's entire content library. Search activity is leveraged by the platform to understand demand and what's trending. Content performance data is displayed to inform sellers about what's most effective. Seismic's Live Docs technology lets your sellers generate customized documents and presentations populated with up-to-date information. Workspace functions as a digital briefcase for each opportunity, where your teams can edit, share, and review content. Preparations for meetings and presentations can happen in Workspace without ever having to leave Dynamics. Keeping your sales team up to date on critical information that's relevant to them is made possible through NewsCenter. Seismic's integration with Microsoft empowers sellers to make informed decisions about the content they use and quickly customize that content for buyers, all while protecting your brand and ensuring compliance. Together, Microsoft and Seismic form a powerful partnership to enable your sales and marketing teams and deliver best-in-class scalable solutions.